Welcome to the Real News Network. We're joined now by Glen Ford, who joins us from Plainfield, New Jersey. Glen is the executive editor of Black Agenda Report and an often contributor to the Real News Network. Thanks for joining us, Glen.
Thanks for the invitation.
I'm going to play a few clips. There's been a debate this last week or two. Jimmy Carter says that racism is playing a factor in the health care debate. President Obama says, well, there might be a few, but it's not really coloring the debate that much. Bill Clinton weighed in the other day and more or less echoed President Obama, saying racism is not really that much of a factor in the healthcare debate. Here's what the three gentlemen had to say.
An overwhelming portion of the intensely demonstrated animosity toward President Barack Obama is based on the fact that he is a black man, that he's African American. I live in the South, and I've seen the South come a long way, and I've seen the rest of the country that shared the South's attitude toward minority groups at that time, particularly African Americans. That racism inclination still exists, and I think it's bubbled up to the surface because of a belief among many white people, not just in the South but around the country, that African Americans are not qualified to lead this great country.
I think some of the extreme right who oppose him on health care also are racially prejudiced. And if you listen to look at some of the signs or listen to some of the rhetoric, there's no question that that's true. But I believe if he were not an African American, all the people who are against him on health care would still be against him, because they were all against me too.
Are there some people who don't like me because of my race? I'm sure there are. Are there some people who vote for me only because of my race? There are probably some of those too. The overwhelming part of the American population, I think, is right now following this debate, and they're trying to figure out, is this going to help me?
So, Glenn, to what extent do you think racism is influencing the healthcare debate?
Well, racism influences virtually every debate in the United States. So the question is, how is racism influencing the health care debate? And I guess we're talking about these teabaggers. I think Dr. Ron Walters of the University of Maryland has it right when he explains this phenomenon as a manifestation of white nationalism. And white nationalism was the founding ideology of this country. It's what prompted the South to secede during the Civil War. So white nationalism has always been not just a factor, but it once was a dominant ideology in the United States. And of course, it still exists. What they see, these teabaggers, to use the usual term, what they claim to see is a big government that is intruding on their lives, and a president who is a unique personification of that big government. Well, what they're actually reacting against is a government that broke up the whites only. This is a white man's country regime in the United States, and they've never forgiven that government for doing so. This is the government that during the 60s declared that white folks could not build a separate white nation, excluding black people. And in addition to that, well, there will be a series of government programs augmenting the New Deal that would further intrude on everybody's life in a good way, or most of us thought, by trying to make sure that everybody gets health care, that people get food stamps, and if they don't have enough to eat. All of these government intrusions are viewed through a prism, if you are a white nationalist, of the other intruding upon your life. The other, of course, in the United States being a black man. And now they have the specter in their minds, I'm talking about the teabaggers, to generalize who they are.
And that may not be fair, because I think the teabaggers is kind of a complex mix. I mean, you're talking about people that oppose big government with essentially racist underlying motivation. Which is not necessarily all the teabaggers.
The ones who are making the noise that caused us to have this conversation today, not the institutional Republican Party, not the Federalist Society, not all those agents who have been with us all the time, but the topical folk, the ones who are making the noise that we are responding to. Yeah, those are the grassroots white nationalists.
The reason I say it's not all the teabaggers, because I think where this debate gets complicated is that some of the people that oppose big government have a kind of legitimate alienation with a government that's controlled by Wall Street, that they see a government that essentially serves a corporate elite. And I think you get this kind of weird mix in this movement, which is people that come from this, essentially ideology from slave society as one trend, but then you have this other trend which seems to be people that have more recently kind of woken up to this idea that this government doesn't belong to them.
Well, one of the peculiar things about white nationalism is that it can make demands for white people, white poor people, that it would for assistance from the government, that it would deny to other people. So it has a kind of schizophrenia. I don't think that progressives are being schizophrenic or in looking at what I still call the teabaggers. I believe that they see the world in a schizophrenic manner. They don't want to be totally, most of them don't want to be totally isolated from the state. They want the state to serve them. And by them, they mean white people. And any service that the state gives to non-white people, they believe is illegitimate. And so you have the spectacle of these white nationalists saying, big government, you keep your hands off of my Medicare. That's a contradiction in realistic terms, but it quite makes sense if your worldview is that, yes, the good white people of America deserve Medicare, but all those foreigners and those other people that Obama represents, they're just beggars trying to drain the society of its wealth without contributing to it. That's the way they think. It's their mental problem that makes the contradiction here.
What I'm getting at is that I don't think this is a monolithic movement, this movement that's opposed to what they see as big government or government conspiracy. There's a kind of growing feeling amongst different sections of America of a government that belongs to an elite, not to them. And within that, you've got this racist trend. But you also, seems to me, you have another trend which just feels that this government has been taken over by Wall Street. You get it from Ron Paul types, for example, people that support Ron Paul's foreign policy that are for closing all foreign military bases. And are against U.S. intervention abroad. Domestically, they want to see government out of economic affairs. There's kind of seems to be a mix of different trends within this movement that's against government.
Well, that's the way the reality works in a large country that is whose social system is in crisis. For example, I am one of those who opposes this government forcing everyone to buy health insurance from private companies that are the problem with the American healthcare system. That is, the power of the state, its coercive power, is now in the hands of the same insurance companies that brought us to this terrible state of affairs in terms of healthcare. In that sense, yes, I'm against this government and its intrusion. It is not a question of pro or anti-government. It's what the government does and who it serves.
Let's talk a little bit more about the healthcare debate, because this you need to kind of parse this issue. It seems to me when Clinton or Obama say there's a lot of opposition to our healthcare policies that aren't connected to race. That's obviously true too, because as you just mentioned, there's pieces of this that you're opposed to. In terms of the basic positioning of the Obama administration, the healthcare debate's been very instructive. Obama makes a deal with pharma. Essentially, the deal is that more or less you stay out of this healthcare debate, pharma industry, and we'll take on the insurance companies and get a public option. In exchange for that, you're going to get price protection more or less for 10 years with some small concessions of some economy of scale savings you're going to make for us. And now it winds up, it looks like there virtually is no public option in what's going to come out of this process. So this deal with pharma seems to have been for nothing. So essentially what we end up with, if I'm right, pharma gets what they want and the insurance companies get what they want.
Yes, pharma gets what it wants, and the insurance companies get a captive consumer base that they never had before, with the full faith and credit of the United States. It is a win-win for all of the bad guys. And I'm not one of those who thinks that Barack Obama stumbled into this. I mean, he put all of the power of the White House into the project of isolating the progressive part of his own party, isolating the people who actually represented a majority opinion in the United States and an overwhelming majority opinion in the Democratic Party, who wanted some kind of single payer, not just an amorphous public option, but single payer. He invested the first 7 months of his office in defeating them and accommodating the big drug companies and the insurance companies. Having defeated his own party, now the big drug companies and the insurance companies have no opposition to worry about. And so now they can actually take advantage of their partner, Barack Obama. I don't feel sorry for him, and I don't think that he wandered in here into this morass mistakenly.
Why? What do you mean? Do you think the intent was to make this kind of deal with the pharma and the insurance companies?
Sure. That in fact is his philosophy of government. He clearly imagines that he is going to create some kind of grand consensus, not just in the nation, but in the world, in which those forces that are really irreconcilable somehow are reconciled. And so there will be a no cost to the insurance companies and the drug companies health care plan. That is an impossibility if one is going to serve all of the people and cut down on costs. You can't get a consensus and achieve those stated goals. But that is what he was trying to do, get a consensus. So he pushes on with his fantasy consensus goal, and everything else falls into its logical place. The guys with the money, the status quo, wins.
So in the next segment of our interview, let's talk about this whole issue of critiquing Barack Obama. It's been a matter of some controversy on the left and in the progressive circles in the United States, and particularly amongst African Americans. And I know you're involved in an organization called Black is Back, which is all about critiquing things about this administration. So let's talk about that in the next segment. Please join us for the next segment of our interview with Glen Ford.